Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of The Fifth Meeple. We are a podcast of diverse friends offering our takes on the latest and greatest board games to hit our table. Each of us has a different tag we identify ourselves by based on who, how, and what we play in our own individualistic styles and personalities. I'm your host, Daniela, the goofy newbie or noob, and joining me today is the intellectual introvert.
Hi, everybody. This is Chris.
And the collector.
Hey, this is David.
Today, our lineup is centered around card drafting and set collection. The two games we'll be discussing are Seven Wonders and It's a Wonderful World. After our discussions on each game, we'll face them off head-to-head in our newly adapted battle system, so stick around and see who will win today's Battle of the Funnest. But first, David's here to present us with a topic of discussion, which is unknown till now to both Chris and I.
Yeah, so the topic for today is going to be, what is the mechanic you least like in board games? Is there a mechanic that just stands out to you that you're just like, oh, if it has that, I might be out, but you're normally playing it still. But
yeah, for me, it's probably deck building, especially if you're in a situation where you've got a sort of, which I think maybe with any deck builder, you have to kind of call the deck and try to get it where you want it. And I'm not good at it. And I also never feel like you can do enough of it, maybe just in the games I've played, but I don't find that enjoyable for me. And so if someone says, yeah, it's a deck builder, I immediately takes a step down for me.
Is there a specific game you're thinking about?
I don't have a specific one that says, man, this is the perfect example of it. One of the games I'm thinking of is Taverns of Tiefenthal that I played, and I kind of like the theme, I like the game, but I never feel like you have enough time to do what you want to do, or you spend all your time doing that. And to me, it takes away from the fun of the game. It's not a fun mechanic for me. Okay. I know it is for a lot of people. I don't like it. Can
a mechanic be kind of like the theme overall too, David? Not like the style, like space or something like that, but can it be like the overall style? Like I would say, like for me, I do not like economic games. Is that what you're looking for, maybe?
yeah, like is there a specific part of an economic game that you don't like?
I think I find them a little bit drier and too thinky for me. Like I guess Smartphone Inc. Here's the thing. It's not like I hate the game or something like that. It's not something I enjoy playing because there's a little bit too much dryness in it. I don't know if that makes sense because I know you love that game.
Yeah, but you play Power Grid and you like that game.
No, she didn't like Power Grid either.
You didn't like Power Grid?
No, and I was good at it. But I guess for me, I don't find that style really. It doesn't call to me.
Okay, yeah, that could work. I mean, there's different ways you could do an economic game. There's a lot of different mechanics there. So, but I get overall, yeah, that's what they normally have, some kind of mechanic like that. I mean, for me personally, the mechanic I least like is uneven turns. So I don't like when a game ends and like two players didn't get the same amount of turns as the player that won. To me, that's just really frustrating all the time. I'd much rather have even rounds or something like that. Or if the last player, somebody goes out, then the other two still get a move.
Yeah, that's for me. I don't like it when something happened, it ends right away. And
yeah.
I need at least one more turn to be. I don't care if I got an equal number of turns. Give me one more turn after whatever happened, so that I can at least do something with what I have left.
Yeah, that's super frustrating. Or like when something signals the end of the game and you didn't know, like that's frustrating to me too. It's just like, game's over. You're like, wait, what?
Yeah, like Chris, when you're talking about deck builders, like something like Dune Imperium, is that something that it has deck building in there, but it's just one part of the mechanic? How's your feeling on that game?
Yeah, and that's, I would say, of all the things I remember about Dune is that I didn't like the deck building aspect of it. I didn't feel like I could get it going, and there was too much in there that it's like the only purpose when you have a deck building, maybe not the only purpose, but a lot of times what I end up seeing is, okay, yeah, these are all the cards you got to ultimately wean out of your deck, right? And it's like, well, then why put them in there in the first place when all of a sudden now I got to waste turns trying to do that. And if I don't do it effectively, I'm really hampered. And just, again, it's just not fun for me.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same way with, I think, my issue with sometimes it's like, the guy ahead of you, he goes out, and if you didn't get an extra turn, you're like, well, I could have beat him in points, but you had one more turn than me.
Yeah.
That's where I get frustrated with that mechanic sometimes.
The only other thing that I think for me might fall into this category, just off the top of my head, and this isn't really a mechanism, but it's kind of tied to it, is when things are just too tight. And so I think of a lot of games where, yeah, that was a really tight game and you had to manage it out. But when it's so tight that you've never felt like you can do anything, when you're trying to build up an engine, but you never even came close to getting your engine going, or you need resources to do something, and it's just everything you can do to be able to just do one thing, let alone the 3 or 4 things you want. And I know some folks really like that. I like it to be tight. I don't like it to be so tight that it's smothering.
Yeah. I think would I not play a game because I don't like economic games? Not really, because half the time I don't know what we're playing until it comes to the table. So there's surprise, like for me. But no, I mean, like I said, Power Grid, I think I won a game or so in that, and it was just drier than toast. So
yeah, I would say my second runner up that was really close is player elimination. I really don't like that mechanic. I think it's a very old school mechanic. And I think that if you're playing a long game, if somebody gets eliminated early, it's never a fun feeling at the table. If it's a short game, 15-minute game, people are getting eliminated, that's one thing. But, to play a game where, you could just be sitting there doing nothing.
Or the late start.
Yeah.
Like the game played recently. It was like 25 minutes later. Oh, David, go have fun, and then you're playing by yourself at the end, and everybody else is out.
I don't know what you're talking about.
No, I agree on the player elimination though. And again, if it's a short game, maybe you can live with it, and maybe it's also potentially impacted by how many players are there. If it's a 3-player game and you got eliminated, and it's just waiting for one other person. Great. If it's an 8-player game and you're number 1 out, now you're just off watching TV or something,
exactly.
waiting for it to end.
That's why there's so many fights in Monopoly. Anyways. Well, thank you for answering that question for the topic of the week.
All right. Thanks. If you guys have any mechanics that you do not like or like the least, go ahead and hit us up on any of our social media or shoot us an email. We can always talk about that on the podcast as well. We'd love to hear that from you. Chris?
Yeah, before we get too much farther, we just wanted to thank everybody for listening and ask that you take a second to hit the subscribe button so you never miss a show. We'd love to have you follow us on Instagram at 5th Meeple, jump into our BGG Guild, or check out our website at thefifthmeeple.com. Finally, we'd love to hear from you either by leaving a review for us or just sending us a note at thefifthmeeple@gmail.com. And once again, thanks for listening, everyone. All right, so let's take a short break, and then when we come back, we'll talk about 7 Wonders. Seven Wonders is a card drafting and set collection game where players compete to build the greatest city in the ancient world. 7 Wonders takes place over 3 rounds or ages. In each age, players receive 7 cards, draft 1 into their tableau, and pass the rest to an adjacent player. Most of these cards, which represent various structures, have a cost to them and can be purchased using the resources provided by other cards in their city or by buying resources from an adjacent city. Some structures are also part of a synergy chain that allows them to be built for free if the previous structure in the chain has already been built. Players may also discard the card they draft to increase their coin count or use it to help build a great wonder that provides victory points and special effects at various stages of its construction. There are 7 different types of cards identified by the ribbon color at their top. Brown and gray cards provide various resources that can be used to build other cards or wonders. Blue civilian cards directly score victory points. Green science cards represent one of 3 different scientific fields and score based on the number of each individual type collected, as well as for full sets of all 3. Yellow commercial cards earn coins, produce resources, change purchasing rules, and sometimes earn points. Purple guild cards score game endpoints based on specific criteria, and red military cards increase military strength. At the end of each age, players compare their military strength to each of their neighbors, either gaining or losing points as a result of the conflict. When the game ends, players total their score from all of these sources, and the player who has amassed the most points scores the wonderful victory. 7 Wonders was designed by Antoine Bauza and was first published in 2010.
All right, Chris, thanks for that excellent summary and overview of what 7 Wonders is all about. All right, guys, so let's just dive right in. Let's talk about some of our best moments and just thinking on all the different things that we really enjoyed about this game. David, how about you?
Yeah, so 7 Wonders is a game that I'm pretty familiar with. I played it in both large groups. I know we played it in a small group here. The thing I like best kind of with 7 Wonders is that there's a lot of ways towards victory. You have to really kind of pay attention, though, the more you play this game, depending on the experience level of players, of what people are actually doing on the table. Just because I feel like there's a lot of interaction by seeing what people draft. So it's one of those games where if you haven't ever played it, you're probably not going to win if you're playing with experienced players, but there is a lot of depth, I think, in this game if you play this game a lot, and there's a lot of different ways to actually get a victory, which is something that I like in games where there's multiple paths to actually win.
Yeah, I agree with the point that you just made, David, on you really got to look at what your partner to your left or your right is doing. For one, you're passing and drafting as you're going around. You can kind of see what cards have come to you and what are being taken as they go back and forth. But definitely, I think the second time we had played this the other week, we played it once and then we played it again right back to back. The second time we were all really looking, okay, who's really doing what with the cards for sure. So, Chris, how about you? What are some of your best moments?
Yeah, for me, I'm thinking back to when we were playing this at just 3 players. I think it's a very different game than when you're playing it at a high number of players, just from the standpoint, I'm thinking back to where I had a handful of cards and I knew these cards are coming back to me. And I'm trying to make a guess based on what the person other people at the table, what might they take? What might they not? And okay, maybe a little bit of push my luck to say, I'm going to let that one ride. I really want it, but I think I can get it back. And I remember one time I had this card, I think it was an 8-point card in the third age. And I said, no one has the ability to buy this. I can get it for free, but I can wait. And so I took that and it never came back to me. And I'm like, David, you bought that card? You're like, yeah, look at all these in front of me. And I'm like, I never saw that coming. And maybe mini frustration to me at the time, but a great moment thinking back, okay, that was a chance I took that didn't pan out. But trying to make those decisions and figure out what can I get away with and how can I really kind of maximize what I'm getting out of here is an interesting angle for me.
Yeah, I agree. I think those are some of my best moments as well, just trying to finish the game and win based off of the collection that you received. But my top best moment was beating you, Chris, at this game.
I don't want to talk about it. Don't talk about it.
You didn't record it, so it didn't happen. So, but I think this, again, is another one of those games to me that's a little bit chancy, right? As you just explained, you're trying to get certain cards. You're going to let it go, see if it comes back. I really like that. And even though, like I said, I don't really like drafting games, I think this one is starting to grow on me a little bit. So you heard it here first that I am starting to like the drafting thing. I don't know, the last time we played, I thought it was fun. It was a good time. And just the playing time was fast too. So I think those are some of my top best moments of this game. It was just, we had pulled this out. I hadn't played this, I think, in a year. And then when we re-pulled it out, first game had to knock a little bit of the rust off. Second game, we were flying through it. I remember we finished it super fast and it was like two, back and forth. So that was really fun. So I like that you can bring it out and it's quite a fast, quick game.
Yeah, I mean, this game is, it's one of the original, I feel like, hand passers where you're passing the deck of cards around, at least that I can remember playing in my board game history. Is one of the first ones on the scene that kind of did this mechanic. And it's a lot of fun. I think when you play it, the first time you kind of play this game, you're drafting for what helps you. But I think the more you play it, you start hate drafting, which
100%
is always a lot of fun, depending on the group. You're trying to bury cards. If I see Chris has military or something, I'm like, well, he's not getting this one because I'm gonna bury this one. So I do like that aspect, and I do like the aspect of Seven Wonders, and it's always been a draw because it played 7 players. It wasn't a party game when it first came out, so it's actually a little bit more strategic. So if you hate party games like I do, Seven Wonders, if you had a lot of people, was one of the only games at the time that you could actually play up at a high player count. And then another thing I like is that no matter how many players you add, it might add a little bit more to setup. But as far as the actual gameplay, it's always going to be around the same length of time because you're doing the same mechanics, whether it's 3 players or 5 players or 7 players. So I do like that about this game as well.
Yeah, and you talked about, I don't know if you called it hate drafting, but I'm going to tuck this card to make sure that Chris doesn't get it. I feel like we did that a lot in that second game where you said we're really paying attention. We're like, where in the heck are all the military?
All the military, yeah, we buried those.
Right, they were all buried because we're all looking, really, really playing our game with our opponents in mind, which again was pretty cool to where you're not just, you can win by scoring more points or you can win by forcing your opponent to score less.
Yeah, yes. I agree. Mm-hmm. Awesome.
I guess the other thing is, we kind of touched on it. It is a really quick play, and once you grab that iconography and understand it, things click and things move quickly. And I know we'll probably maybe touch on frustrations, all the iconography. It takes a while to get it, but once you get it, I think it's just okay. Everything, for me at least, once it clicked, everything makes sense, and you can really just kind of fly through it and see the connections that are there.
Yeah, I think that's another reason why I like this game is because this is a game where if you put it at the table, you're going to probably play multiple games back to back. It's not one of those games where you're just going to pull out, you're just going to play it once and then call it a game night. For this game, normally you're at least running it back to back, if not multiple times, just because of the short play time that it has. And, like you said, once you knock off that rest of the first game, if you haven't played it in a while, that second game is always a little bit more intense for sure.
Yeah. And I think kind of moving on to then some of our frustrations, you had talked about the iconography. That for sure, for me, a year ago was one of the frustrating things about getting this and trying to learn it. There was a lot to learn, especially within each of our player boards. There were some things, I don't know if I think you talked about it in the beginning, when you can use the different synergy and see how do these work together. And some of these cards, like in the sciences, they work together. But then there's some things, again, on your player board at the bottom with the arrows. There's a lot going on, right? You have to manage quite a bit for what it is, I would say. But some of the times the rewards didn't make sense to me, but that's like a very mild frustration for me going through this, having pulled it back out a year later. For the amount of time that I feel like I've put into gaming over the last year, this clicked. Our second game, the first game, I was kind of like, oh, what does this do? And how does that work? And blah, blah, blah. But then as soon as you get through it, the more you play games, I will say, this is going to click. It's going to be easy for you. It's not as hard or as intimidating as I had first played this and received it. So I think that's just really kind of some of my only frustrations. But I don't know if either of you, when you first played it or can remember back that far, I don't know how old this game really is, but did anybody else have to touch on the iconography maybe?
Well, I think I touched in the last episode that once I played Seven Wonders Duel, then I had a much better feel for it. But I also think that was because I took some time to make sure I was reading through all the rules on Duel. I learned it to be able to teach it to my son. And I think that is a danger. If you try to teach or learn Seven Wonders too fast, you're not going to get it. You need to take some time to get all of that. And I mentioned earlier on the iconography that, hey, once you get it, you get it. I feel like that's true for the resources. But I still struggle sometimes. Okay, what does this guild do? And what does this mean when this symbol's over here and this symbol's over there? And really trying to be able to interpret, okay, what each one of these symbols means, inevitably whipping out the rule book and looking for the cheat sheet in the back.
Yeah, I think when I first played this game, there's quite a bit of expansions, I think, out for this game. And if you try to play with those expansions, if you never played this game, the iconography is very overwhelming. I mean, I remember playing this, and there's so many different expansions you can play with, and it just gets crazier. And so if you don't even know the base game, it's really tough. I think one of the things that is a frustration for me, though, about this game is just if you don't have players playing at the same player level, like experience level, it's a very uneven game if you play with multiple players. You know, this was one of the first times I played with only 3 players, and I actually think I like it better at 3. I think it's actually a little bit more strategic in the decisions that you're making. I've normally played this game only with like 6 or 7 in very large groups. And I feel like there's always like 1 or 2 people that kind of don't know what they're doing. And so the person, if there's an experienced player sitting next to them, they tend to run away with a lot of stuff if they're getting passed cards to a lot, just because the newbie doesn't really know what to take. And so if you're playing with somebody that's really experienced, you know, if you don't take any science and you're just letting the guy next to you take all the science, you have no clue. I mean, it's going to be a runaway victory almost every time. Science cards just multiply like crazy. If you get a lot of them. And so I actually like this game surprisingly a lot more when we played with 3, just because I could always affect either Chris or you on most turns of what we were doing, and I actually like that. And kind of like Chris was saying, sometimes I'm like, do I take a gamble and take this card now that I need, or will it come back to me?
Because that doesn't happen at a higher player count, right?
It's just, okay,
what's the best card for me? I'll never see these again, right? And I think to your point of if it's a newer player, they may not know what else may come.
Exactly.
Whereas if you're playing at 3 players, at least that person gets to see, okay, this within 3 turns of the 6 turns that they're going to take in each age, they're going to see all the cards that are available to them, at least have some idea.
Yeah, exactly. There was a point too. The first game that we had played, Chris, you were running away with the science cards, and I remember, I think in our second game, there was a couple times I just tossed some of the science cards because I was looking to see the different emblems on them of what you still needed to get the 3, and I did. I would toss them and get the coins instead because hey, that was like for me. I didn't really want anything in that hand that was passed to me, but I knew I didn't want somebody, whether it was Chris sitting to my left or David to my right, depending on which way the cards were circulating back and forth. So that's an important piece too. I don't think we.
Yeah, I will say you have come far like that because you have started hate drafting a lot lately, and I don't appreciate that.
But always in my direction.
I don't know about that.
Well, hey, when we were buying stuff from each other too, that was something else too.
Danielle used to always be the friendliest player at the game, and now at the table. Now
the
it's not always that.
Revenge of the Noob.
Yeah.
That's going to be my new name.
Right. Once you get punched in the face enough, you're going to start punching back. Right?
Yeah.
Eventually, you just say, I'm not taking it.
Yeah.
I'm wondering you guys' take on this because I felt like sometimes I felt like the game was somewhat self-deterministic as to what I needed to do. Okay, so on the blue civilian cards where you have the chains where if you built this, you get that other one for free, then I almost get locked into, and maybe I shouldn't, and maybe that's why I didn't win any of the recent games we played, but I feel like, okay, yeah, I have to take that one.
It's a trap. No, I'm just
it might be a trap, but but again, if you didn't build that first one, it's much harder to get that. And so I almost felt like, sometimes I felt like my hand was playing itself. Like, okay, it's obvious that I have to take this. It's obvious that I have to take that. But again, I didn't win, so maybe it wasn't so obvious.
Those, blue civilian cards, both games that we played, I did not try and play those because I don't think I fully understood it. It didn't make sense of how do I know I'm ever going to see that in the hands that came around.
I think you do know that someone's going to see them. I don't know if you know you're going to see them. But you take out certain cards for different player counts, and my guess is that's all I didn't look through the cards, but my guess is, when you're playing with 3, all those ones are the ones that matches. So there's going to be something in age 2 that matches with everything you got in age 1. But whether or not you see it is different, but it'll be out there.
Yeah, and I think for me, I wasn't willing to take that risk to wait for the other ages for that to even happen. So I think that was just too chancy for me.
Yeah, my last frustration with this game is that the asymmetrical empires that you can be in this game, some of them, I think if you go online, you'll see this, some of them aren't as balanced as other ones. So, some of them, they're way more difficult to win with, and some of the powers on some of them are way better. And I think the more you explore this game, you'll find that out. But I also think some of the expansions help to mitigate some of that and make other factions better. I think they balance it out over the years. But if you're just playing base game like we did, sometimes you can get stuck with a bad faction. That's why I like to always try to pass out 2 player boards. I'm not sure if that's in the rules or not, and let somebody choose between 2. At least they get a choice, because sometimes if you just get stuck with one, it could be a lot worse than somebody else's starting hand. So you're already starting at a deficit.
Yeah, I think in both of those we just passed out whatever. Right?
Yeah. Because the second game I got a nice one. That's why, a little unfair, but it's fine. I'll take the win.
Yeah. I think one of my only last frustrations would be just the overall theme. I like the artwork. I like the idea of it. I can understand a little bit of the resources that we need to build other things, but I don't believe overall the 7 Wonders really came out or played itself well in this game. I don't know if any of you guys thought differently.
I don't know. I was thinking I kind of liked the artwork, and I was going to actually take a moment here to just kind of get the cards out and look at them. But I thought the artwork itself on the cards was actually pretty good.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think it was done very well. Just when I'm playing, I don't think the theme really comes through. Maybe a little bit, again, with the economic portion of it and trading things to build things. But I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, it's really just you're looking for, okay, I need 2 woods. Are you really paying attention that...
It could have been
do you even
space
realize
theme.
Half the time that every one of those is a building or location or something like that? No, it's just, okay, this one gets me wood. I don't look to see, well, what's it called? It's just, it gets me wood. That's all I need. The only other frustration I had, which it's not a big frustration, but all the recent times we've played this, I felt like, wow, that was over a little too quick. I like the fact that it's not a long game, but every time we played, I felt like, man, I feel like I need one more round to really get what I wanted out of it. And I don't know how that would look, and it would I'm sure it would mess up some of the balance, but it might also solve some of my, depending how they do it, some of the, okay, well, I know that if I got this blue card in the first round, I got to be looking for it in the second round. It's not coming in the third round. Then it's over, just like that. So I felt like both times it's like I wanted a little bit more out of that game.
Yeah, we could have been rushing it too. So do you think maybe?
I don't know. I think it played, once you know what you're doing, it just goes fast, right?
Yeah, our play times were, I think the first time we played was 32 minutes. The second time was 26 minutes. So we shaved 6 minutes out. But it's a pretty fast game. I mean, it's always around a half hour.
Yeah, and that's what the box said.
I felt like the second game we were flying. Like we were just like boom, 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 trade, pass. So yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, David, why don't you take us to the collector's corner and tell us a little bit more about this game?
Yeah. So right now you can find this game on Amazon for $59.99, which is quite expensive, I think, for this game, just because it came out in 2010. You can actually go to Walmart. It's at $54.99. But if you go on eBay, and sometimes eBay's not always the best deal, but you can find this game brand new right now on eBay with free shipping for $37.99. And, to me, this game is about a $40 price point, I want to say, in my head, brand new. If you buy it used, like on a secondary market or a used copy, I say you can get this game somewhere between around $20 is what it's going for. It's been around for a long time. There's a lot of variations. You could even see on the box copy that we have how many awards it's won over the years. I mean, the box is just covered in stickers on one side of just all the awards it's won. So it's a game that's definitely been out there and been played, and it's readily available. But I think right now Amazon, that's a pretty steep price at $60 for a game like this in my
Yeah,
opinion.
I mean, it's cards, boards, and chits.
Yeah.
That's really all it is, right? So
that price kind of shocked me.
Yeah, that price to me is for the name. It's because of all the awards it's gotten. And maybe, hey, if people pay it, that's what they'll sell it for, but that's high.
Yeah. So go to eBay, get it for $38, free shipping.
All right. Anybody else have any final thoughts? I know I have a couple. Just as a beginner, I was frustrated with this game. However, I would never say not to learn this game. I think once you do have the iconography down, you'll be set to fly right through it. It was fun. We had a good time just pulling it out, kind of getting our juices flowing as we started to game on a game night. And I just, I really do believe that after gaming and consistently doing this for the last year, this was a much more fun game to play a year later down the road, being a little bit more advanced and secure in my playing ability. So keep playing and keep learning. Those are kind of like my final thoughts.
Yeah, my final thoughts as somebody who collects a lot of games is I think this is a game that you probably should have in your collection if you are building out a collection of some sort. I think you should have this game because it is one of the originals and what it does. And it's always something that if you have 7 players and you don't want to play a party game, you can pull this bad boy out and at least, play a game that actually has some strategic choices in the game. So I think it is a good building block, though, just to teach people kind of and get their feet wet with kind of hand management and drafting a little bit.
Yeah, for me, I mean, I come at it, again, I don't like games that you have to be crazy or anything like that. This game isn't that. You can play it however you want to. I do like games that tend to be a little more thinky and require some planning. I think this is a little lighter than typically I would like, but it's 30 minutes and I had fun doing it. And again, even though I am a little bit introverted, I did find myself when someone's, hey, where's all the, it still was able to elicit moments that would kind of get me going and kind of bring me out of that shell I'm in to say, hey, how'd that just happen? Or what are you doing? Why aren't you buying it from me? I think a couple times no one was buying stuff from me. What are you doing? Well, you got all that money over there and all that. So I thought it did give me a decent amount of fun moments, even though it was a quick game and it wasn't super thinky. But there was enough there. There was some strategy there. So I enjoyed it.
Great. Awesome. All right. So there you have it. 7 Wonders and our thoughts on it.
It's a Wonderful World is a card drafting, hand management, and set collection game that places you in charge of an expanding empire, seeking to outpace your competitors and rule the world of the future. Each player begins the game with an empire board, providing them with their initial resource production and an asymmetric game end bonus. Each of 4 rounds begins with a hand of 7 development cards, each representing a construct or an ability. Players choose 1 card to keep and pass the remaining cards to an adjacent player, revealing the card they drafted after all have made their choice. Once all 7 cards have been drafted, the planning phase begins. If a card is placed for construction, it can be built by placing a specific combination of 5 different resources on the card as the game progresses. Cards not kept for construction may be discarded, earning an immediate recycling bonus of a single specified resource, which must immediately be placed somewhere. The production phase then begins, comprised of 5 sequential production steps, 1 for each type of resource: materials, energy, science, gold, and exploration. Production comes from constructed cards and the initial empire card. As materials are generated, they must be immediately placed on a card or collected on the Empire card for eventual conversion to the rare Crystallia. Whenever a card's requirements are completely satisfied, it immediately becomes part of the Empire, but its resulting production only occurs at the specified time during the production phase. If one or more of the resources that the card produces has already passed during this production phase, you'll need to wait until the next round to reap the benefits. After 4 rounds, players score points based on the cards in their Empire, either directly or due to bonuses linked to card type, and from bonus tokens earned by being the highest producer of each material during the production phase. It truly is a wonderful world for the player with the most points as they secure the victory. It's a Wonderful World was designed by Frédéric Guérard and was first published in 2019.
All right. Thanks for that summary and introduction to It's a Wonderful World. I would suggest going online and taking just a look at this if you can, just while Chris is explaining it, because there's really a lot of neat components with this. So let's dive right into our best moments of this game. Who would like to start?
Yeah, so I guess my best moments in this game is I do like the juicy choices when we're drafting in this game. I'm constantly thinking, what am I actually going to build and what do I want to sacrifice to try to get built right away by what cube I can get if I sacrifice that card. And I think that makes it very interesting when you're drafting because you're not always drafting necessarily for the best. Sometimes I'm even hate drafting just because I want the cube, and also it helps me because I know Chris or Daniela can't build this building that would actually help them a lot. So there's a lot of choices, I think, with the cards because they're used two different ways, to either build them or to use them for a resource. And I think that gives an interesting dynamic always when you're thinking about it. Normally in a game, I'm not the one that is taking the longest amount of time on my turn. Normally I'm done before a lot of the other people, but in this game, when we played it together, I felt like I was like one of the last ones always that had the cards in my hand. And it's just because I had a hard time going through the choices just because I feel like there was a lot of meat there, and I'm just trying to figure out what I actually wanted to do. So I do like that though about the game.
Yeah, I think that goes into some of my best moments. One of them being kind of what you touched on is I don't think I've played a game like this where it's this card drafting and hand management that you have to think so far in advance of what you're trying to do. I mean, I know there was a couple times, and Chris, I think you were pretty vocal on this, of just, oh my gosh, I didn't pick the right thing that I wanted, or that card didn't do what I thought it was going to do, or, like, even though everything is right there plain and I'm using air quotations of simple that's on the card, you can kind of think, oh, I wanted to trade that in to get what was on that card, or did I want to build that? What am I doing then? So there was a couple different management things that needed to go on, but I really actually enjoyed that challenge. I liked thinking, hey, what do I need for the next round to get the appropriate color cubes to be able to build, but also reap the rewards and benefits of it. So that best moments for one of them for me.
Yeah, I think a really fascinating mechanic that goes on here is that, hey, you go through a production phase, you get a certain type of material, and then, okay, what was built? And then if it provides you with a material that already passed that round, you don't get it. And that's what kept burning me, is I'd look and say, oh, I'm going to get this, I'm going to get that, I'm going to get that. And it kept not working out. And again, I'm a guy that likes to plan, and I like to put that plan together. And for some reason, this one, I just kept getting burned on that, which again, sometimes I like to lose, but I'm okay with it. And it was like, oh man, I got burned again. And a little bit of frustration, but at the same time, just a great mechanic of trying to keep all of that together in your mind of how that's going to work out. There's a puzzle in every single round of what you're going to do. And to your point too, I like it that there are some cards that you're drafting in that first round. They're like, I'm not going to be able to do this until round 3.
Yeah.
Do I think I'm going to be able to pull it off? And what is it going to get me when I get to that point? That to me is fascinating. There's a lot going on in what is a relatively simple mechanic. Hey, you're going to draft some cards. They're going to give you production when you build them. And there's a lot of moving parts in just a otherwise relatively simple game.
And I think that's I enjoy that. I liked really watching the struggle that we were all going through. I think David was like, oh, like rubbing his forehead, like, oh, what am I doing over here? Like, I think you smoked us in this game quite a few times, David. But if you did something wrong, it was vocalized, and everybody kind of at the table knew, oh no, I didn't do what I was supposed to do or what I thought it was going to do. It was just, I don't know. I really like that interaction of it because you're kind of doing your own thing. There's some looking around, but I will say on this game in particular, I was never looking at anybody else's cards because I was so focused on what I was trying to do and build. I mean, there were some out there, but not that much on this. It's just so much, so much of thinking and planning.
I was definitely looking at other people's just from the standpoint of, okay, I know, like you were sitting to my left maybe on one of the times we played, and I knew you were going for the gold, or maybe it was the science. And so I was trying to make sure I didn't feed into that engine that you were trying to build. I don't want you to be able to get the green that you need. I think in terms of color. Well, hey, and you probably still beat me anyway. You've had a good run recently.
Say that again.
I'll never say that again.
Stop. No, tell me more. What else? What other best moments have we had in this game?
I mean, there is a lot of puzzliness that goes on with this game. Like Chris was kind of alluding to earlier, you're thinking about all the different steps because, if I can get this built, then I could generate, and if I get it built this round on production, then the next time it comes up, I can get a blue cube. The issue that I always had, and I think why it was taking so long sometimes, is because where's that blue cube going? Just because you generate it, if you didn't have a spot and save another card to put it on, then it was kind of a waste because it went down into your recycle bin or whatever. And if you get 5 of those and you get a red cube that you can use anywhere, but at the same time, a lot of times I wasn't thinking that far ahead. So it's like, oh, I could build this, great, I get this cube, and then I'm like, oh, I have nowhere to put that cube, so it's just gonna go and get recycled. So that was frustrating a little bit to me, but that thinkiness, that puzzle, it has a lot of steps. It reminded me a little bit of when I played chess. You have to really think ahead if you want to be good at this game, but you also don't want to take a ton of time because I don't think the game's meant for that. So you want to try to be a little bit snappy when you do it.
The other thing I liked about this game is I felt like we were doing a lot of activity. So we're not just kind of sitting there playing on our own world. And what I mean by you go to the production phase and it's okay, now we're doing the materials or now we're doing the energy. And it's just boom, everybody kind of goes and they're grabbing it. You're taking the cubes, you're putting them on the cards, you built something, you're taking it back, you're putting them. There's just a lot of activity that is not all concentrated at one time either. It's okay, you go through your draft cards and then there's 5 different versions of taking cubes, putting them back, getting the bonuses, etc. I just felt like you were always doing something in the game.
Yeah, I did feel like it ran really smooth like that. It almost reminds me of Smartphone Ink a little bit, where you're kind of setting it up, and then the marker's just going through each step, and that's kind of how this game played out too. There's just like each step, and then everybody's just kind of doing their own thing, which is great. Another thing I really like about this game is I actually really like the cubes. I know that sounds kind of dumb, but to me, the cubes added something. I like that they were translucent. I liked getting them. They felt good when I had them on my board for some reason. I just felt, I don't know. I just felt good when I had these little tiny cubes. They don't really do anything else, but if they would have been wood, I don't think I would have felt the same. So, just the type of material that they're made of, it's like this see-through kind of plastic kind of cube that feels good in the hand.
Yeah, and I think even though it's a cube, that fits. It's a futuristic game. It wouldn't be the same if it's a wood cube. I know there's some people that would always rather see wood than plastic. This is a game where I agree that translucent plastic just kind of that cube looks so much better.
Oh yes.
Than if it was just a flat green cube.
Yeah, and I liked actually having something to trade. It didn't matter what it was. It was something going in and out, and then to put those on your player board too really helped. I think the overall theme, as you're kind of stating.
Yeah.
I think one of the other great things about this game too is the futuristic of this. It's a little bit of this like dystopian, futuristic civilization building type game. As we've been talking about, a little bit of the colors and the cubes and all that other stuff. The cards were really beautifully done as well. There were a couple that were so goofy that we would all be like, hey, what is this little like? It was like a little goofy kid with webbed fingers and toes and things like that. And it was just something we could all laugh at and enjoy. And I think we just enjoyed the theme and color of it all as well.
Yeah, see, I'm gonna take that and say, well, that wasn't one of my frustrations, but it was maybe one of my turnoffs on this game. That some of the art was just a little too weird. And whenever that card came that had that kid with the gills and the web, I was like, even if I need, I don't want that sitting in front of me having to look at that. And so yeah, it's this futuristic dystopian, but man, there's a couple of cards I just like. I didn't need to see that.
Yeah, there was some with like some boobies and stuff too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I know, that's why you guys didn't buy them, so I knew if I just passed them, they would come back
Those
to
cards
me.
are coming
So
back to you,
so that actually played into my strategy, especially that baby gill one.
All right, so that kind of led us into some of our frustrations. So do you want to hit on any more of that with the cards, Chris?
No, I think in general the art was okay, and I thought it was decent. But the reality is, a couple of cards were a little bit disturbing to me. and honestly, we talked about the cubes and all that, but they really are just cubes. The little chits that represent the financiers and generals. There's nothing all that amazing about the art, and I don't know if the general and the financiers and the art associated with that really match with the cards. I feel like maybe it's 2 different art styles that are kind of put together in a game that when you look at them side by side, you're like, well, those don't really go together.
But I think that's kind of like representative of the cover.
Yeah, I know, but then that doesn't to me match a lot of the art on the cards.
Okay.
The art on the card seems very different than the art on the cover / chits.
Okay, I'll have to check that out next time we play it then. Okay, great. I think one of the other things that was a frustration for me in this game was I literally thought I was killing it one game. And then I was playing both David and Chris here. And while the score was close, I lost. And I had just felt like I was playing so well. I had the correct cubes. I was building like mad. However, I think Chris eked by me by like 1 point because he was building a lot of the development cards. They had all those boosters and endpoints and things on them. And he just like soared by. And I did not like how that game ended, thinking, wow, I felt like I was doing everything right. But if you didn't have the correct cards with those boosters on them, I'm not really sure that it's going to pay out in the end.
Well, I think that to me, that's a fascinating part of the game that I think we need to play more and get better at that. That it's not about building as many cards as you can. If you're not building the right cards that aren't truly helping you get points at the end, hey, they can generate all the cubes you want. If you're just using them to build more cards that just generate more cubes, it ain't going to do anything for you. You're going to feel really good until you get to the end. And I agree. You're like, well, what the heck? I was killing it, but you weren't, because you weren't paying attention to that bottom right of what are you actually getting for this card. And if you're not putting the cards together right, you're going to do a whole lot of something for nothing.
Yeah, I would definitely say pay attention to those rewards and just the end game scoring on some of that stuff too. So, or David, how about you? How about some of your frustrations?
I mean, I hear what you're saying on that frustration. I think, I won a couple of the games that we played, and I didn't nearly feel as satisfied because when I looked at my board, I was going for points, because points are hard to come by in this game. I think that they're really challenging to come by. The problem is, I look at my board and I looked at Daniela's board, and she's got all these buildings built and she's generating way more cubes than me, but not necessarily the right ones. And so in a way, I can see your frustrations there. And at the same time, even though I would win that game...
You're mocking me.
No, even though I would win that game, I was a little frustrated too, because it wasn't as satisfying, because I felt like, my engine wasn't the greatest. I just scored a lot of points. And, and that's frustrating to me too. I also think this game, I would like to see at least another round of this game. I think this game actually ends too early. It's like by the time I get my engine actually cranking, this game is over. And that's a really frustrating part. I feel like most of the time I'm like, oh, I wish this game would end earlier. This is a game that I wish would go an extra round, because I think it would be more satisfying personally.
Yeah, I think that every time we play it too, that I need one more round. Not to feel like, oh, okay, because I didn't get to get the big one. I just felt like, okay, now I've got my engine where I want it. Let's see what I can do with it. Nope, we're counting final points.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's one of the things I wrote too, that just it ends too fast. And I think it's taken us 45, 50 minutes to play this game, and it seems like it goes faster, like it would be a Seven Wonders style. Get it on a table, you play it, 4 rounds should be in and out and done. And it's not. It goes like 15, 20 minutes longer, which kind of just blows my mind. So it's just, the ending is too fast. A little bit of a frustration, but I wish it was longer for sure.
Yeah, and the other thing, you kind of touched on this, David, and I don't know if this is real or not, but I do feel like there are a couple of cards there that, like a 10-point card and a 15-point card, and if they come up at the wrong time, because there's no layering. We talked about Seven Wonders, and it's all, hey, there's certain cards going to come in the first stage, certain cards in the second. For these ones, you just shuffle them all together and see what you get, right? And if you get that 10 or 15-point card at the right time, you're like, oh, well, hey, there's an easy 15 points, as opposed to if you don't get it at the right time, or who gets it, who doesn't, do they have that engine built? I felt like there was a little bit of potential luck on things like that. And we also played, there's 2 different sides to the faction board or company board you can play, and one of them gives you sort of a starting mechanism to score points, and the other one is pretty much the same, but it doesn't, right? It just gives you starting, and I much preferred when I had something at the start to build on, and then I at least had something to go on, as opposed to, hey, I'm spending my whole first round even just trying to figure out what am I even going to do here, just based on the cards, and then 25% of the game's gone, and I still don't know what I'm chasing.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I definitely don't. I like Seven Wonders a little bit better in that respect, where you have different decks, different tiers. So in round 2, you're going to see round 2 cards. Here, like you were saying earlier, it's just, luck of the draw on what cards you get. And sometimes it just stacks really bad. I mean, like you could just, by random chance, have a really bad game where you guys can't really build a lot of stuff because the cards that come out are just crap. Like, you get the expensive cards early, and then all the building cards come late in the game. Yeah. And it's, and then you're just kind of in a weird game.
Yeah. And that's kind of weird. I would think there'd be some sort of mechanism to protect against that. Because especially when you're playing a 3-player game, and this can go up to 5, it's not like you're just playing with the 3-player cards. No, there's going to be this massive portion of cards that you never see. Yeah. And depending on what those cards are, it could really impact the way the game flows.
Yeah. And I would agree with Daniela too. A little bit of my frustration is I was definitely more in my own like solitaire kind of state, if that's kind of game you're kind of looking for. Yes, there was stuff where I can interact and kind of affect the other players, but I felt it was way harder in this game to actually affect what you guys were actually doing versus, even in Seven Wonders. So, it was definitely more of, maybe because the puzzle was so brainy, but it's, you're in your own player space a lot more. I know Chris was looking around and trying to do that, but I don't know. Did you feel like you could affect people as much as you could?
I was just going to say that while I was trying to do that, I don't know how effective it was, because I can remember we were playing that 5-player game with Pete and Dave, and I knew Dave was collecting blues, and everything was about blues for him. And I'm like, okay, someone's got to draft this blue. I'll just take this one for the resource. And he still got what he needed on the blues. So I don't know. I feel like maybe I was just hate drafting against myself, right? I'm taking things I didn't need to really no impact on other folks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to see, I know it sounds kind of silly, but some other type of, whether it's a card holder or something that I could put, I know I'm going to trash these and get the resource off of them for that round, or I'm going to build. Like, I felt like I need something else on the board or on the table in front of me to say trashing, because I'm going to be doing this in the round to try and get the cubes versus build. So it just, oh man, the management of it all was just very, very thinky, very brainy. And then by the time it came around, I was like, oh, what was I going to do? What was I going to do by the time the cards were going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth? So,
and I started actually doing that to where as I'm drafting a card, I'm deciding at that point, am I going to build it or am I going to trash it for the component? And I'm putting it at a different place. It's still in front of me, but I'm putting it in a different place to try to keep track as I go along. And maybe I'll end up shifting something. But I agree. If you don't do that and you're like, okay, I just drafted 7 cards, I had a plan. What the heck was it? I'm kind of building that plan in front of me on the table to remind me of exactly that.
All right. Well, there's some of our frustrations and just a little bit more of the kinks we got to work on to it. But David, over to the collector's corner. What do you got for us?
Yeah, so right now, It's a Wonderful World is going on Amazon for $46.98. It's actually 6% off. Normally, it's a $50 game on Amazon. So, yeah, that's a pretty decent price. I mean, for this kind of game. I would probably buy it used, though. I mean, right now you can find this game used for around $25. It's been out there for, a couple years, came out in 2019. There's definitely copies on the market. They actually came out with a sequel called It's a Wonderful Kingdom. So, so there's even more copies maybe of this that, people are getting rid of. But, I don't know. I still think in my head it's a $40 game. It's going for $50 online. You can maybe get it cheaper at one of your local board game stores because I think I've seen it for around that $39.99 price point. And, in this case, I think Amazon's a little high too, but, you can maybe wait for a sale on it. But that's kind of where this game sits right now. It's, used, I think it's around $25 in my head.
All right. So just some final thoughts here. I think for me, I'm actually surprised at how much I enjoyed playing this game. I think as a new person who's literally been drinking out of a fire hose for the last year or so, and I'll keep bringing that up because this is just a totally new world to me. This was almost actually in my Cardboard Crushes lineup. So that might surprise some people, but I just believe it's a lot easier iconography to get through. To me, it was a faster learn. It requires a lot of good just planning. It's brain power, but I think I did like how it shook out in the end. And so I honestly wish it probably played a little bit longer, like we were saying, just another round to be able to get through it with how fast it was. Any other final thoughts?
Yeah, so coming from a collector's standpoint, It's a Wonderful World, when I first heard about this game, this game was in direct competition with Seven Wonders. I heard, if you like Seven Wonders or you don't really like it, maybe try It's a Wonderful World because it takes the core mechanic of drafting, hand management, but it changes that formula just a little bit. And so I remember, specifically buying that game for that reason because I was a little burned out on Seven Wonders at the time. And, to me, I'm still debating if it deserves a spot in my collection. I think it's challenging, to some extent with the puzzle, but the game takes about an hour to play if you play with a 5-player count. I think at 3 players it was taking us around 40 minutes to play. And I'm just trying to figure out if it's the right game in my collection personally for the time it takes to play it. I do think it is an easier teach, though. Like Danielle was saying, the iconography is way easier to get because it's mostly just cubes. Can this cube color go on there? So I do love that about this game. But from a collection point, it's one of that I think I'm sitting on the fence with. I do enjoy it. I do like my plays of it, but I just don't know if it's something that I'll keep. So we'll see.
All right. Thanks.
Yeah, for me, I like the puzzle in here. I think we talked a little bit about the fact that, hey, there's a lot to try to work out, but really you can decide for yourself how much you're going to really dig into that. How deep do you want to get into the planning? And even if you try to go deep, as long as you control yourself from total analysis paralysis, it's not this, oh my God, my brain hurts at the end, because you can just decide how far do I want to take it. And I like that about the game. I thought it was the right level of complexity. I still think there's a lot for me to explore with this with respect to really finding, okay, it's not about building cards, it's about building the right cards. How quickly can I find the right cards? How quickly can I put that together? And it's a fun puzzle for me. That's why I enjoyed the game.
Great. Awesome. Thank you guys for all those final thoughts on It's a Wonderful World. All All right, guys, it's that time in our podcast where we're going to do the Battle of the Funnest. We have a little bit of new criteria for this battle and a new rating system. So we're going to go through 5 different categories. We got theme and production. We've got mechanics, value for your time, replayability, and the fun factor. We're each going to go through these categories individually and pick our choice. And then whichever game wins the most categories will be declared the winner. Let's get to the battle. In one corner with a weight of 2.32 out of 5 and a rating of 7.7. One of the OGs of card drafting, the world's most awarded board game, the wondrous, the colossal, the statuesque 7 Wonders. In the other corner with a weight of 2.32 out of 5 and a rating of 7.7, a rising challenger presenting a dystopian view of the future, respected by financiers and generals alike. It's a Wonderful World. All right, we have our theme and production. David, who are you bringing out?
Yeah, this one's a tough one for me, but I'm actually going to have to go with It's a Wonderful World. I do like a little bit more sci-fi. I like the components. I like the cubes. They add a little bit. When I look at both of these on the table, just as their base game form, I think It's a Wonderful World stands out a little bit more, gives me a little bit more of that eye candy. And so for that reason, I'm going with It's a Wonderful World.
You just want to eat those cubes. All right. I'm actually going to stick with that as well. It's a Wonderful World. I like the overall idea of this. I think 7 Wonders needs a little bit more, but I agree. I like It's a Wonderful World.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with you guys as well and go with It's a Wonderful World. I think it's got a nicer table presence. I am kind of, I like the theme of anything in the future. It's a little bit spacey, not much, but to me, it's more than just cards. It's cubes. Maybe that's all it is more, but that's enough for me to push it over.
All right. Round 1 goes to It's a Wonderful World. On to round 2 of the mechanics. David, who you got?
Ooh, this is a tough one. I actually came into this battle thinking I was going to go one way, but I'm actually going back. So I'm going to go with 7 Wonders, going with the OG on this one. The reason because is I like it. It's simple and it's a little bit less puzzly. So and for that factor, I do like the mechanics better. I think when I'm just looking for a game that I just want to play hand drafting, and that's the mechanism I'm looking for, I still think 7 Wonders does it a little bit better.
Okay. I think for the mechanics, I'm going to go back to It's a Wonderful World. I just like the overall puzzliness of it. If that's even a word, guys, I don't know. Let me know. But overall, the mechanics of this one really did it for me. Chris, what do you got?
Yeah, I'm going to go with It's a Wonderful World as well. I thought it was a nice puzzle. There's a little more there. I mentioned when we were talking about it, 7 Wonders started to feel a little bit too deterministic for me. And so for me, I like the fact that, hey, I had a lot of different ways I could go in It's a Wonderful World. So that's it for me.
Okay, round 2, It's a Wonderful World eked that by. Round 3, take us in. David, for the value for your time, who are you rating?
Yeah, so for value for my time, just looking at how the games play out, I'm still going to go with 7 Wonders. I think it plays the same whether you have 3 people or 7 people in the room. And I think the variation of time that I get with It's a Wonderful World, it just varies because, if you do have a person with AP, you could get way more stuck in It's a Wonderful World than 7 Wonders. And so for that reason, I've always said, for 30-minute game, 7 Wonders, I think, brings a little bit more to the table. So I'm going with 7 Wonders on that.
All right, thanks. I am also going to go with 7 Wonders for the value for your time. I really like this under 30-minute play time. Again, no matter what you're playing at and how many player counts you're playing at, I think it's a great get it on the table. And like David had said earlier, you're going to play it probably a few times. You're not just going to set it up once and play it once. So it's a good hour 2 games, get it in, get it out. I was a little bit more frustrated with It's a Wonderful World on the time placing and I felt there needed more rounds. That one needs a little bit of work. How about you, Chris?
Yeah, it's going to be a clean sweep here. I thought it was 7 Wonders as well. Every game we played seemed to be like 30 minutes. It seemed like just the right amount of time for the kind of game it is. It's a Wonderful World was a little longer. Plus, I always felt myself saying, okay, even though it was a little longer, I wish I had that one more round. Yeah. And so for me, it's 7 Wonders.
Okay, 7 Wonders is back in it. So it won round 3. All right, so for round 4, replayability. David, what do you got?
Ooh, this one is challenging. I played both of these games about, obviously I played 7 Wonders a little bit more than It's a Wonderful World, but I do have over 10 plays on each of them, well over for 7 Wonders and It's a Wonderful World. I feel that, in my opinion, I'm going to have to give this one to 7 Wonders just a little bit. I think the replayability is a little bit more there. especially if you start adding on expansions, which I know that's, something that, we're just reviewing base game, but I think the replayability, there's always a different way you can win on this game where It's a Wonderful World. Maybe I just haven't found that combination yet, but I always feel like if you can get a big point card early, you're in a good shape in this game. And I haven't really seen a strategy yet to mitigate, somebody getting a big point card early just by luck of the draw. And so for that reason, I'm going to go with Seven Wonders. Daniela?
All right, so for replayability, I too am going to go with Seven Wonders. There is something about the game that I feel like I rediscovered in our last game that was a lot of who you're playing with, what you're playing with, how many people are at the table, and just I want to see how much more that can squeak out in games and excitement for me. So I'm going to say that. How about you, Chris?
Yeah, I'm going to buck the trend on this one. For me, It's a Wonderful World has a little more replayability for me. I felt like, again, Seven Wonders is going to start to feel very samey for me relatively quickly. And I'm sure if you start to put in expansions, that might change it. But that to me isn't the base game, not what I'm looking for. It's a Wonderful World. I think I can see a lot of difference every time I play that game. So it's a Wonderful World for me on that one.
Okay, after 4 rounds and Seven Wonders taken round 4, it is a tie, 2-2 right now. Here we go, round 5 and the last round based on the fun factor. It's going to be a hard one because we are split right now. David, fun factor.
Oh, okay. I'm coming with the fun factor. I actually didn't think I was going to say this, but I am going to go with Seven Wonders for the fun factor.
I did not see that coming.
I know. I didn't see that coming either. I thought It's a Wonderful World, is going to take it for me. I think the fun factor for Seven Wonders is I just think it has more player interaction, and I do like player interaction when I'm at a table. I like that I can affect people. I can buy stuff from other people around me, so there is value in what I'm building, not just for myself, but for others. And for those reasons, just a little bit more player interaction, I'm going to have to give it to Seven Wonders because I do think it makes it more fun, especially the hate drafting. I feel like, for whatever reason, Seven Wonders does it better.
You better know those people in that group.
Daniela.
I think for me, the fun factor, this is going to be super individualistic for me. It's going to be It's a Wonderful World. Again, when this game was first brought out, I kind of just did the David method, threw it all out there, didn't know what I was doing, but quite soon after, 2 rounds, which is half the game, I really understood it. I got it. I really enjoyed the building of it. I like the thinky aspect of it. So personally, for me, even though it's not super interactive with other people, it's a little bit more individual as you're playing it. I just thought overall, I really want to see how else I can manipulate this game. So for me, It's a Wonderful World. How about you, Chris?
Yeah, this is. I agree, Dave. It's a little tougher than maybe I thought it was going to be coming in. And when I think of Seven Wonders, to me, it might depend on how many players there are. And I do think that, hey, if it's only 3 players like we were playing more recently, that was a more fun game for me than if it's at 6. Because again, you get a couple extra things to take into account there. For It's a Wonderful World, though, I thought whether we were playing at 3, 4, or 5, it didn't matter. I had a really good time on that game, and so I think if I'm playing It's a Wonderful World, it doesn't matter how many players are at the table. I'm going to have a good time. I had fun playing them both. I had more fun playing It's a Wonderful World, so I'm going to have to go that way.
Okay, so for round 5, It's a Wonderful World wins it, and okay, in a really close battle, winning 3-2, It's a Wonderful World wins our Battle of the Funnest. Let us know if you guys agree with how the judges called this one or not. Thanks for joining us on this wondrous episode of The Fifth Meeple. We hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and if you want to get in touch with us, email us at thefifthmeeple@gmail.com or Fifth Meeple on Instagram. Remember, keep on hate drafting. We'll see you guys next time.
I'm actually still recording just in case you say something dumb.
My head, ow! Right.
There's a lot of wood talk always in this table. Anyways.
Yeah, once everybody knows what they're doing, that is fun. I agree with both of you on that. So yeah. Good job, Danielle.
Yeah, thanks for that enlightening bit there.
Delete that.
Delete mine too.
Any other good stuff?
What are you doing?
Here
Boring.
comes toast. All right, guys, it's time for our Battle of the Funnest. You can't look away that fast.
What?
You were like laughing immediately.
The Chinese judge always gets paid off.
All right, that'll do it for us on this episode of The Fifth Meeple. We hope you enjoy. Stop it.
Are you Jamaican? What was going on?
That was stupid.
It's dumb. Yeah, I didn't like that at all.
I didn't like that. That was terrible.
Flat.